The aliens won't let it happen. You reveal all their secrets. They exercise strict control over us.
Now, you know, there are a lot of people that are going to examine your facial expressions here, every twitch, everything, and say, and of course, so did you look? Did you see? Did you explore?
I can't reveal anything.
Oh, really? Because President Clinton said he did go right in, and he did check, and there was nothing.
Well, you know, that's what we're instructed to say.
Important thing for the public to understand, how do you keep something secret? You hide it in plain sight.
And I suspect that unless the Defense Department proves us otherwise, that it was probably some form of an alien spacecraft. And I think as a public figure you have to be very careful about what you say, because people can have pretty emotional reactions, and I said my goal wasn't to try to stir the pot.
And now I'll ask Officer Stein and his colleagues to escort the accused into the room so that we may all look upon the guilty party. Don't get him too close to me, please.
In the alien costume, the governor's chief of staff.
Now, this just goes to show that you guys are entirely too serious.
So it's there. Everyone, I mean, there's 5% of the U.S. population have seen these objects. But you create an environment where the subject is so pilloried and ridiculed that no respectable scientist or doctor would want to be identified with it.
Internal documents from the Defense Department and intelligence agencies explicitly stating that they want to have this campaign of ridiculing and destroying the credibility of completely credible, completely honest eyewitnesses to UFO sightings and even sightings of extraterrestrial beings on the ground, that they want them discredited. They want their credibility destroyed.
If someone comes out and says, I saw a UFO on TV, the only ones that see a UFO in the TV programs are the rednecks out in the country that are going coon hunting or alligator hunting at night. You don't find anybody with any kind of smarts or some professional individual saying, hey, last night, let me tell you what I saw.
And this officially was released by the CIA, talking about how they have people embedded in all the major media to change, alter, and affect stories to their benefit.
You are fake news.
So every news agency, every television, radio station in the Albuquerque, Santa Fe area had our snitches in there. So we knew, and we paid them. We paid them good money. One of the reasons you get the people is you pay them, and that was controversial. That was somewhat controversial.
You know of national media that have had?
Oh, yes. Yeah. I'm not going to name them.
We now have relationship with reporters from every underlined major wire service, newspaper, news weekly, and television network in the nation. In many instances, we have persuaded reporters to postpone, change, hold, or even scrap stories that could have adversely affected national security interests or jeopardized our sources and methods. And it goes on to then say that they have the same within academic circles.
There's a finding that the Pike Committee made that they had verified 42 full-time Central Intelligence Agency paid employees that were inserted inside the major national news media centers. And most of them ended up being the so-called national security reporters.
The man turned to me, and this is a board member of Time Life, and said, Dr. Greer, we basically are scribes taking dictation from the right hand of the king. The fourth estate is dead.
You know, reporters for Time magazine who told me specifically that they've provided the stories and their editors have spiked them.
Yeah, the high level producers and directors. Yeah.
And how were they paid for those?
Cash. Yeah, you pay. What you do is you make them sign a form and you tell them, you got to report this to the IRS. But whether they do it or not, you're not going to give your form to IRS. I paid, I better not say. Some of them are large.
If you, Ms. McClain, know of any proof about aliens, you can give it to me, and I guarantee you I will get it out. But I am skeptical.
Based upon my experience representing NBC and representing the New York Times, I know that they will refuse to publish information, which in my judgment is clearly important information for the public to know.
The corruption of the media means that you have then undermined democracy and our basic constitutional protections. Because if you control the information flow through the elite media, and the only place you can get this information is through the tabloids, where they want it, because it's discredited there, or on the internet, where there's so much false information that's mixed in with the real information that you don't know what to make of it, there creates this complete confusion.
When you go to a supermarket checkout and you look at the tabloids, what you may be reading there are actual stories of actual events, but when it's portrayed through the tabloids, it gets discredited.
And they're ridiculed and their careers are destroyed pursuant to a very specific self-conscious official program.
Now, this has worked for 50 years. Why would they change it now? This is the technique they've used.
It is time for the truth to be brought out. Behind the scenes, high-ranking Air Force officers are soberly concerned about the UFOs. But through official secrecy and ridicule, many citizens are led to believe the unknown flying objects are nonsense. I urge immediate congressional action to reduce the dangers from secrecy about unidentified flying objects. CIA Director, Vice Admiral Roscoe Hillenkoetter.
And so we're sort of living in a Truman Show here. Everyone thinks we have a free press. We don't. We have a democratic process where all these sort of sensitive issues will be handled legally. We do not. And that we have an uncorrupted scientific establishment, which we do not, and which we will prove.
The structure of secrecy extends to the scientific and academic arenas, where a deliberate effort to spread disinformation has been going on for decades. From professional debunkers to CIA-funded committees, our trusted academics and scientists have been complicit in the secrecy.
A lot of people see something, and a lot of people see things that are really they can't identify, but that doesn't mean it's quite a leap.
I believe that people report seeing things they cannot identify, but after spending 25 years, I've found not a shred of evidence that we have alien visitors in our sky.
Look, this would be the greatest discovery in the history of science. NASA would be elated. Of course, they'd go to Congress to get more funding. Why would anybody cover this up?
Let's do this other little thought experiment, everybody.
Are you going to do this with baking soda and vinegar, Bill?
In 1952, Project Blue Book was launched by the U.S. Air Force to allay fears from the public of ET activity and to assure them that they were doing everything in their power to look into this.
I am here. Of scientist who is heading up a committee to tell the truth, because I'm a scientist. These guys are scientists second. They're humans first. And it says it cannot be allowed to be known that Dr. Condon et al. Are actually working with the CIA for these psychological warfare and spin factors.
I concluded that this was not an objective study. So I wrote a letter to Condon, and he was so furious at that he called up James S. McDonnell, who was at that time the chairman of the newly merged Douglas and McDonnell aircraft companies, and tried to get me fired.
This is in these documents. This is not a theoretical case. This is why I say you form a committee when you want to kill something.
I must admit that any favorable mention of the flying saucers by a scientist amounts to extreme heresy and places the one making the statement in danger of excommunication by the scientific theocracy. Frank B. Salisbury, Ph.D.
And from the very first meeting I had with the Director of Central Intelligence, I didn't need to convince him that the UFOs were real. I mean, in fact, I pulled out all this dispositive evidence that Carl Sagan would want to see. And he said, I already know this is real. But I want to know why I, the CIA Director, James Woolsey, and the President of the United States aren't being told anything about it. The why is always the hardest question to ask, and nobody asks it.